Welcome back. For today's video, we're going to try another stencil technique on a 3-inch plate using this white Tecta 113 Bullseye and this clear Tecta 1100 clear 3mm, 2 pieces, approximately 3¼ inch, 3 3/16, somewhere in that area. And we're going to fuse these together in the kiln, and we're going to put a honeycomb pattern on top, fuse it, and then we're going to take it out and use a bee stencil and put a bee pattern, one of these, probably this one, over the honeycomb. So it'll be yellow and then a black bee. So we're just going to do 2 firings to get this effect that I'm going to try to do today. So the stencils, we have these folk art, and I'll put the link in the description. I got these at Walmart. I think they were like less than $3. And this one is one with a bunch of different just random patterns. And we're going to use this one, which is a honeycomb. I have this other stencil that I bought off of Etsy. It has a honeycomb pattern, but it's a little smaller than what I want to use, and it doesn't cover the entire piece of glass, which I guess would be okay because it has some void areas here. But I want to go with a bigger pattern that's in this one, and I'll show it to you. I'll set these to the side. So it just looks like that. So we're just going to lay that over the white piece. We'll set the clear one to the side. We'll get a kind of centered the way we want it. Not sure where I want the pattern to fall. I think that looks good. Just whatever you want to do. Okay. And to help it lay down, well, I'll get a couple of brushes and just kind of lay it on the edge, just to kind of weight it down a little bit so it kind of lays flat to the, I usually like a thicker type stencil for these projects, but this is what I could find for this one. Use a pen, whatever you have laying around, and just grab it and just let it like touch the edge so it's kind of holding the stencil down a little bit. Nothing fancy, just kind of getting it to lay flat. So the frit we're going to use is the black 100 opalescent. That's for the bee on the second firing. So we'll set that to the side. And the yellow for the honeycomb, we're going to go with a marigold yellow, number 1320 Bullseye powder. So we're just going to open this up, get our sifter, make sure it's clean. I usually blow it out with some air just to make sure it's nothing left over from last time. Just dip out some of the frit. I like using a tool or a brush handle or anything I have laying around just to rub up against the just spread it around. Doesn't matter if it's that even. It'd be okay if it's thicker in some places and not as thick, because it'll give it kind of a, I think it'll give it more of a textured type look, a little uneven, which is okay. Darker in some areas, lighter in some others. I think it'll add some depth to it. So just keep going around. Till you completely fill it up, all the areas around the stencil. We'll check it once we take off the stencil. If I have some bleed over or whatever, I'll clean it off and we'll try it again. But hopefully it'll be okay the first time. Get a little bit more. I think I'll put my glasses on so I can see a little bit better. Just keep going around looking for thin spots. This is a translucent yellow marigold. I thought it would be a good substitute for honeycomb looking yellow. And then I'll just take a little tool and go underneath the stencil and try to lift it straight up, and then I can move it to the side. Try not to push it. So I'm gonna lift it straight up, and then grab it and just try to slide it over. And we'll get that frit off the stencil in a minute. So I'll try to grab this without disturbing it too much so you can see. So that's the pattern. So we'll take this to the kiln and do a fuse firing on this. Melt these two pieces together and it'll melt the frit all at the same time. This frit will end up being smooth to the surface. And then when we apply the B pattern on top of it after the first firing, we'll fire that at a lower temperature, more of a tack firing or just to a melt temperature. So it'll give a little bit of three-dimensional look. That's what I'm going to go for. So we'll get this fired and we'll come back and show you the next step. Okay, we've got our piece out of the kiln. We'll take a closer look at it. Looks like white on bottom, but it's clear, so the white shows through. There's the side view and then the top view. And remember, we used this honeycomb stencil pattern, and I kind of centered it so it was kind of equal distant on each side, the pattern, top and bottom. So I just wanted it to be kind of symmetrical. It doesn't have to be, it's just the look I was going for. And you can see what I was talking about with the putting the different layers or thicknesses of the frit, where you get some darker and lighter areas in here. So it kind of gives it more of a textured, maybe a three-dimensional look, but you can see I'll hold it sideways. Where it's completely flat. It's melted all the way into the glass, which is what I wanted. I wanted a flat, smooth finish on that. So I took it to a full fuse. So it held its pattern really well. Looks really good, I think. So next we're gonna take this B pattern and find a spot, probably in the center. Doesn't have to be, it can be on the side or in the corner or whatever you want, or you can put multiples. I'm gonna go for the center on these three, centered on these right here, and put some black frit, the Bullseye black opalescent powder 0100. That's what we're going to use. So let's go ahead and apply this, get it set up and ready. This stencil kind of has a bend or a wobble to it, so it doesn't lay exactly flat. So as you saw in my last video, I maybe we'll use some anchoring to hold it down to the glass. Just check it out, make sure everything's good on it, and make sure it's really clean. I'll wipe it down since I have fingerprints on it. Make sure everything's looking good before we set it up with the frit. Always make sure my glass surfaces are clean before applying any stencils or any powder. So we've got our black powder frit. we'll go ahead and get that ready. Set that to the side. Now we'll get our stencil ready. I'm going to place the body part of it on this one, the body of the bee, and the wings up on these two. So that's why I oriented this pattern the way I did. So there'd be yellow showing through on the stripes on the wings and the body. So that was just kind of the effect I was going for. So try to get it centered as best we can. And like I said before, if you apply the frit powder and your placement's off a little bit, you're like, just dump it off, brush it off, and try it again. Nothing really lost. So as you can see, when I let go, it kind of just falls over. So I'm going to use this tool to hold it down. Check it again to make sure I got it centered. I'll get another brush. I'll use it to shift the center a little bit more. So I think that looks good. Let's see, maybe I'll just set this one right on top here. I think that'll be okay. I think that'll hold it down just enough. We'll give it a try. If it doesn't come out the way we want, like I said, just brush off the powder and into your bottle and try again. So we're just gonna go real easy. I'm using an 80 mesh sifter. Flat liberally. I do a thin coat to start with, and I come back and build it up a little bit more. Can't see it really, but I'm going to try to go up to the edge, at least to the top edge of the thickness of the stencil itself to build it up, because we want to go for a firing that's going to slump it, but also not overly melt the frit. So with my kiln, that's about 1300 degrees. I think it needs to be adjusted a little bit, but that's the temperature I find the best results at. So you'll have to do some tests on your own kiln and try that to see what temperature is the best for you. So I try to get it to where the edges of the stencils are almost disappearing. You can't see them, so it's built up enough, I think, to give us. And it's not going to be really thick after we fire it. It's just going to have a smooth, slightly raised texture to it, so it'll give it a nice contrast in textures between the bee and the honeycomb itself. So I think that's good. We'll take this off really easily. Take this one off, and you see it just fell over because it was weighted on one end. So I'll lift it up and see how it did. We'll just dump that in there. I'll lift it up so you can see it. I might brush some of the stray frit off before I set it in the kiln. But it's definitely a bee, and it's centered where I wanted it, so I think it looks good. We'll get this in the kiln on the slumper mold. The 8998 Bullseye Square Slumper B is what I'm using. It's approximately 3 inches, 3.5 inches. I usually cut the glass just under 3 1/4 because it will spread out a little bit when it fuses. So it ends up being a good thickness of glass, or width of glass for the mold. It turns out really well on other projects that I've used it for. So we'll see how this turns out. We'll slump it and come back and show you the result. Okay, I got everything out of the kiln. First I'll show you the little pendant that I did, or you can use it as a magnet or whatever you want to use it for. I think it turned out pretty good. I put the little sideways profile bee on it. You can see the raised profile of the frit. I fired at a lower temperature, about 1280 to 1300 degrees, using my kiln's pyrometer. Yours may be a little different, but basically just fired it until it just melted and fused to the surface. So that's that. And I wanted to show you the mold also, what that looks like. It's just a small, it kind of fits perfectly on there the way I cut it. So this is the result. I think it turned out pretty good. I'd have liked to center it a little bit more, maybe further down, but it still looks good. I think it'll be fine, functional. So there you go.